Hi, we'd like to welcome everyone to another in a series of webinars designed for airports and the aviation community. I'm Terry Bills. I'm the Transportation Industry Manager here at Esri, and today I'm joined by both David James and Michael Beavers from the Esri Airport account team. And then we also have Ed Copeland and Ryan Butler from Woolpert. And today, what we'd like to do, which is a little bit unique, is really talk about the way that Esri is trying to support airports in the process of recovering from COVID-19. We would like to thank all of you for joining the webinar today in these really most difficult times. So we want to really sort of give a little bit of an overview. We want to talk about the things that Esri is doing to help support you, the airports, and the airport and aviation community. We want to highlight some of the work that Woolpert has done, and you'll be able to see that basically a FEMA reimbursement site. We'd like to open it up for question and answers, and hopefully what we'd like to do is to create a dialogue over time of how can we, Esri, and the various partners, Woolpert and a number of other partners in the partner community, how can we better support the airports? And we realize this is very, very difficult time. So we would like to have that as an ongoing dialogue. Before we begin, I'd like to point out that we are recording this webinar, and while everyone will be on mute, there will be time for question and answers. And you can type your questions into the question box, and we'll try to answer as many as time allows. And additionally, the slides that you do see will be available. We'll put them on the GeoNets and that you can download. In addition, if you have colleagues that were not able to attend today, we will have the webinar, the recording will be up on the Esri website, the same location, and you'll be able to view that at your leisure and whatever time zone you happen to be in. So with that, let me maybe give a few statistics. I'm sure those of you on the airport side, you don't need further reminding about really how difficult these times really are. We do have the graphic from the Airports Council International, their estimates of the not only the number of passengers, the expectation, the passenger traffic losses for the full year of 2020, but then also for the airport revenue losses for the full year. Some other statistics that currently the Transportation Security Administration, from their passenger counts at various airports in the U.S., they estimate that U.S. air passenger traffic has decreased by 95% compared to the same period in 2019. And anecdotally, they even think that a fair number of that 5% are really just cabin crews and the staff on the planes. Additionally, the estimate by experts is that currently at least 50% of the world's aircraft are currently grounded, and the estimate is that that could potentially go as high as 80%. And we will speak to that a little bit later in an application. Airports increasingly are being asked if they can mothball planes for the foreseeable future. The estimate is that it will really be from from IATA, they estimate that COVID-19 will cost airlines $314 billion in passenger revenues. Again, a 55% drop from 2019. And for those of you on the airport side, the total airport revenue losses are expected to shrink by 77 billion. Another way of looking at this, if I can, let's see, for whatever reason, I'm not letting me. Well, I was going to show you a website that actually gives a live comparison of existing traffic year over year, and the comparisons are really quite startling. So the estimate, and this is another ACI world. This was a blog that recently emerged, and I think as we look forward into the future, airports are really going to have to change and redirect their emphasis on the passenger experience. And this blog really points out that the key essentials are health, safety, and connection, and that what passengers are really going to be looking for is a heightened feeling of safety, a wellness, of cleanliness and sanitation in the airport. And what they're also looking for is a different way of communicating with the airport, and that airports would really be well served if they changed the way in which they communicated with passengers to become more welcoming, explain the measures that the airports have taken, and so really finding new ways to communicate with passengers, whether through mobile applications or certainly through things like story maps and others, to really engage in a different type of communication with passengers. And with that, maybe I can go to that website. So if you can see, that was the number of flights in North America in 2019, the same day, and you can begin to see the level of reduction. And similarly, I can go up to Europe and literally see just the drastic impact that the coronavirus has had on air traffic. So with that, let me turn it over to David James to really begin to talk about some of the actions that Esri has embarked on to try to help airports in that new recovery process. So David, take it away.
Okay, have you given me control?
I have.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that prompt for me to accept.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're not.
I got it. I've got it.
You've got it? Okay. There we go.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, or good evening, depending on where you are. I'm David James, based in Florida. As Terry explained, I'm part of the Esri Airports team. Actually work throughout the world. It is pretty bleak news, and we're trying to do everything we can to help airports as they start to think about recovering. It's not all bad news. So in the US, what I'm showing you now is one of our websites, our hub site that we put together that shows the distribution of the funding from the federal government as part of what's known as the CARES Act grants. And so, again, this is something that maybe you would be interested in leveraging at your airport. You can select any airport, and it tells you just exactly how much funding that airport was granted. So in the case of my local airport here in Tampa, they were granted just over $80 million as part of that grant act. Now, obviously, that's not going to entirely offset all of the losses that they're experiencing, but it's certainly a help. So what is Esri doing in terms of helping with this? I hope some of you are familiar with this Esri website, the microsite that's devoted to COVID-19. Very helpful resource. It tells you about all of the things that Esri is doing generally around helping customers with COVID-19. One of the most important things is you can request help from Esri. It's going to take you to this form, which is part of the Esri DRP Disaster Response Program. You can fill out this form, and once you've done that, you can get help from Esri in terms of free software and technical support, remote technical support. One of those this is the overview of that site, if you're not familiar with it. There you go. Also, there are some really interesting aspects, one of them being the idea of continuity, business continuity. So this is where you request that help. I'll just go back. Internet seems to have gone very slow. One of the things I wanted to bring to your attention was solutions that Esri has put together around providing organizations like airport with business continuity solutions. Again, these are made available to you as airports freely from Esri. They mostly leverage ArcGIS Online technology. So even if you're not currently an Esri customer, you can request licensing and subscriptions to ArcGIS Online that will be free for the period of this crisis. These business continuity solutions will help you track employees and other resources that are going to be critical to your operation as you start to reopen the airport. So I would encourage you to go to these websites and review these resources. What I'd like to do now, Terry, is transition over to Mike Beavers, so Mike can show some very specific airport solutions that he's assembled that we think could also be helpful during this period.
All right, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you, Mike.
And I'm sharing my website right now called the Coronavirus Response Hub. Do you see that as well?
Check, we can.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the time. I appreciate everyone's interest, and we're all working here to try and help support you during the response and recovery efforts. So one of the things that I've done is worked with the disaster response team to help stand up some focused tools that airports can use in the response and recovery efforts. And this is a sample site that I put together from our solutions, and they can include a series of apps that you can also stand up. And if you're interested in getting help with your response and recovery efforts, like David mentioned, you can go to that disaster response website, and on my hub site, which I'll share with everyone in the chat window, you can click here to get assistance for your response, and it opens up the very same request assistance page. So feel free to do that. And we're tracking the numbers as closely as you are. And as you can see, you can fill out metrics like these that would then reflect the numbers in the state or the county or the city where your organization is located. So it's easy to reconfigure these tools so you could then track them, and then following dashboards, you'll see these repeatedly throughout response and recovery efforts, and you can configure these so that they're focused on your jurisdiction. As you scroll down into the website, I want you to have a look at a few of these resources, and these are individual applications that you'll see today. And the first would be this airline corona response website that's focused on airlines as well. It looks very similar to the one that you'll see that I'm showing you for airports as well. So you can configure these as you like. So we'll just quickly look at an app that talks about the impacts that airports are experiencing right now in terms of their delays and any travel restrictions. So again, you could configure an app like these that are loading to do whatever you want to show. We'll let that load and we'll just go on to the next one. So there's also a business continuity application that you can stand up. And in this case, we had it configured for airline crews. You can do the same thing with your employees at the airport. So you could have the individuals check in on their mobile device, and then you could track where they are. Airlines are using this now to see where their crews are and if they're in a place to be able to respond to, and then crew an aircraft as they're flying. So there's several others as well. This is the app that shows the airports in the United States and abroad, and if they are experiencing any delays. It doesn't look like there's any delays going on because frankly there's very few airplanes flying. And then travel restrictions as well, so you could segregate out the airports with travel restrictions. So let's talk about how airports are going to have to respond, how you're going to have to really change your operations in terms of how you're going to restore cleanliness and then the safety and the confidence of the individuals the passengers who are traveling into your airports. So it's about social distancing and then about maintaining operations like deep cleaning your individual terminals. So an application that I have built out is really focused on two workflows. The first would be terminal managers and airport managers want to be able to see in real time the status of all the cleaning areas throughout the airport. This is a sample that I put together that shows a terminal. Then you can quickly, as an airport manager or a terminal manager, just go in and quickly segregate out individual cleaning areas that have been cleaned and inspected, those that are clean but yet to be inspected, and then those that are in the process of being cleaned. You can separate out those cleaning areas based on the day and time. So we could see those areas that were cleaned last week, yesterday, and any that were cleaned today. And then we could segregate out as the terminal manager to give you a quick view of the individual cleaning zones. You can go 1 through 8. In particular, it focuses the restrooms because they're going to require constant deep cleaning. So being able to just quickly see a status of those with the information about the day that it was inspected and who inspected it is really important. So now I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to talk about the operation from the supervisor who oversees the cleaning operations, and these cleaning areas in this terminal reflect those that you saw in the dashboard. So I'm going to say oversee the cleaning of area 38 now, or area 42, for example. So all I'd have to do is on my tablet, which I carry around in the terminal, as the cleaners are beginning to do their cleaning, I simply tap on that area and then it populates parts of this survey. Then I'll just fill out the name of the person doing the cleaning and then the date and time, and that's taken from the tablet that I'm using, or I can modify that time here. And then I just simply put that the restroom was inspected. And it's no more difficult than that. And I simply submit it. I can upload a photo if I liked. And that information in real time then gets written back to the dashboard so that an individual who oversees the cleaning operations, the terminal supervisor, could then see that change as it happens in real time. So the value of this tool set is it not only allows you to track ongoing cleaning operations, but it also records that information in a database for auditing purposes. Airports are, I'm sure, going to have to be audited to verify that these cleaning operations are ongoing. Another app that I'm working on is because airlines are temporarily mothballing their aircraft, like you see here, airports can use an app to help manage these mothball facilities, these areas at the airport where you could temporarily park aircraft while they're under mothballing. So let's go to that app now. And great thanks to the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport for working with me on this project. Again, this is intended to be used by a person who's going to be planning the mothballing, and the app has a whole series of scaled aircraft of individual types based on, say, Boeing's aircraft or Airbus. So the ease with which you can go in and then plan an operation where you're going to drop down those airplanes and put them in a parking area, and will they fit and for how long. So let's just zoom into this area on the south side of the field. And I'm going to do a quick operation where I'm going to bring in another MD-11 or plan to put in several others, because maybe with some from FedEx or decided they were going to have to mothball these airplanes. So first and foremost, I'd pick from the list the aircraft that I wanted to copy, or at least add another. So I'd go in and quickly copy that. Remember, this is a web app, so all I'd have to do is have secure access to the web, and then I could easily go in and then copy this aircraft and then move it and then position it where I would like it, make sure that it fits, and then I could rotate it and then reposition it so it's tucked in, and you get maximum use out of that. Another capability is then to track the registration number of that aircraft, and then the carrier, and then the date that it was put in that place, and then maybe the date that it was removed for leasing operations. So then you could lease that space through time and earn some revenue based on that. So there's a series of other tools that you could use to go out into the terminal and then verify, take a picture of that airplane and then verify its location. So these work as a suite, and they can all be found, the examples can all be found on this coronavirus response website. I'm going to return the discussion back to David now, and I think we're going to go on to our next presenter. Thank you very much.
Okay, Terry, so I think you're going to transfer to Ed and Ryan.
To Ryan, yes, indeed. Ryan, you should have it. There you go. And Ed and Ryan, you may be muted. You may need to unmute. Yeah, there we go.
Hi. Yeah, this is Ed Copeland with Woolpert, a program director in our geospatial group, and Ryan Butler's also with me. He's one of our team leaders. Woolpert's kind of taken a different approach. We spent a lot of times with our colleagues on different forums and calls within the different organizations, AAAE, ACI, ACC, and we kept hearing people talking about, FEMA and FEMA reimbursement, because the message had come out from the federal government in early March declaring a state of emergency for the entire nation, which is the first in history. And a lot of airports out there did not understand how to go about getting the 75 cents on the dollar back in reimbursement for additional things that they might want to do. So we partnered with Esri, just because we are GIS people, and decided to develop an application, or in this case, a toolkit. It's more than one application that allows you to track money being spent on COVID type related incidents and to create reports, dashboarding, et cetera, all using the Esri suite to be able to submit the documentation back to FEMA to get reimbursement after you've done the work. So with that, I think we want to step you through our three modules we have here. And Ryan, go ahead and start. And he's going to show you how to input it in the dashboarding. And then we'll close out them with the reporting side.
And Ryan is still muted, Ed.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead, Ryan.
All right, cool. I apologize. So yeah, as I mentioned, the three modules of this application you can see on the screen: the input form, the dashboard, and the reporting. So I'm going to cover from a high level all three of these modules. So as you can see in here, we're going to start with the input form, and each one of these modules has an info button on here. So if you get into it, because we're not going to be able to go through every feature in every field inside this application, if you do click the info button, there is some help guide information out there that will take you through literally every field on the form, that if you don't know what it means, there is some documentation out there to help you. But the real meat of the application is the actual input form. So if I click on view, and it opens up inside of here. So this is all built on Esri Survey 123 technology. So what you'll see opens up here is on my desktop, but it obviously will open up. Oops, where'd it go? There we go. So it'll open up, it'll work on a cell phone, a tablet, anything you want. Why does it keep going away? There we go. I'll just keep it there. So it'll work on any kind of mobile device, any kind of field application that you have, iOS or Android. And there's different sections of this. So I'm going to expand it to make it a little bit bigger so everyone can see. So the first section I'm going to go over in here is the general information section. And then we're going to touch on a couple of these, but you'll notice there's labor, equipment, rented equipment, materials, contract work, and donated resources. So those all come from the FEMA requirements. So the fields you see inside of here, we put them in here for a reason, because they're required on the export of the reporting out that you're going to later submit to FEMA. So that's why we put these fields inside of here. So the first section I'm going to start at here is the general information section. So you'll see inside of here, it automatically put my name. So everybody has a unique log into this application. Number of people can be in at the same time. It's not going to limit you in that regard. And then you'll notice that through this application, there's a lot of drop downs. There's a lot of fields that are automatically filled out. We tried to make this as user-friendly as we possibly could. So for example, inside of here, reimbursement eligible, if you know it's eligible for reimbursement, you're not sure, you have the ability to fill that out inside of here, along with the date completed. So you'll notice it automatically put, I'm in Eastern time zone. It automatically put 2:26 p.m. today, but you do have the ability to go in here and alter that as you need to. The map below it, so working with Esri, this is a geospatial application. So right now, if I click on the map, it does take me to my current house. Now, if I was over at the airport, which is where I usually fly out of, I wouldn't even have to do this, but I do have the ability to go in here and change the location of where this work was done. So we're going to talk about using equipment, materials, and labor, and this is the approximate location of where that work was done. So in this case, I'm going to pick it in the main terminal here in Columbus, Ohio, and that's going to be my spatial location. And then right underneath it, I can fill out a location description manually as well. Right underneath that, you'll notice that there's a category field. So, and it says inside of here that COVID-19 relates to FEMA Category B. So there is FEMA Category A through G. Typically, what airports work with are in the C to G category. This is, as Ed mentioned, a little bit unique of a situation. So we did have this default in the application to Category B, but it's important to have the other things in there, because unfortunately, this probably will not be the last large event that impacts an airport where an airport's eligible for FEMA reimbursement. So we wanted to make sure we included those other ones in there as well, because this could be something that's used down the road in the future, not during this time of COVID-19 only. And then underneath that, the subcategory, this is a drop-down field, and the one field that's specific to COVID-19 in our application. So for example, you'll see this is the release straight from FEMA of what's eligible for reimbursement for the COVID-19 pandemic. So one example inside of here is if I start to type in GIS, you can see it narrows it down to disinfection of public facilities. So that's one area that is reimbursable. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in along with the description of work. So I can put clean the ticketing area or any kind of details that I want inside of there that we can later report on. Right underneath that, in the pictures and receipts, I do have the ability to go in there, and whether it's take a picture of before and after picture of what I did. If I went out and procured some materials, I could take a picture of the receipt inside of here. So I'm just gonna go in here and just grab a picture I have here on my desktop of an airfield light, and you can see you can add it inside of there. So receipts or pictures or anything you can add in there, which just enhances your documentation to FEMA down the road. There is in different sections inside of here. You'll notice that there's a plus icon over here on the right. So we can add as many pictures as we want. We can add as many things as entries of labor we want. We don't have to fill out individual forms for each entry, which is a nice feature inside of here. So that's the overall general information, and I want to touch on two of these sections in here specifically. So the first one I want to touch on is the equipment, but all the other sections are laid out in a similar fashion. They're just based strictly on the FEMA sheets that need to be printed out and sent to FEMA. So for example, in the equipment summary, if I'm operating a piece of equipment, I can put my name inside of there. In the equipment used, you'll notice if I click the drop down, there's roughly 650 pieces of equipment inside of here. This is straight from the FEMA equipment rate sheet. So FEMA has an equipment rate sheet that you can download from their website that has equipment IDs on it. It has descriptions on it. That's what this list is. So for example, if I type in a van inside of here that I use a cargo van, for example, I can go in here and select that directly from the equipment sheet. If there is a piece of equipment, like I know a pressure washer is not in the FEMA equipment rate sheet, we do have the option to enter it manually inside of here, but that really only should be used if it's not in the equipment rate sheet, and I'll show you why in a second. So the date that we actually used this, so I used it today, and I used this piece of equipment for 8 hours. And what you'll notice is it automatically puts an equipment cost down here. It does that because what's happening in the back end is it's grabbing this piece of FEMA equipment, which has an hourly rate on it according to FEMA. It's multiplying it by 8, and that's the equipment cost that's getting entered down there that will get reported on. And you'll notice on here, all of these sections have a plus. So if you use multiple pieces of equipment, you could certainly add multiple without starting a brand new form. So the second section I wanted to touch on in here is the material summary section. So let's say I had to go out and buy certain materials in here. So if I had to go out to Home Depot and buy some materials, and let's say I had to buy some cleaning spray inside of here, and I had to buy 10 bottles at $19.95 a piece, and I purchased it today, and I used it today, and I did not have that in stock, so I had to go out and create an invoice from it. You'll also notice on here that puts the material cost. So it's a similar looking theme, right? So it's different fields, obviously, in different sections, but the same purpose, which is meeting the FEMA requirements on the reporting side that Ed is going to show you. So you can just go through the different sections. If you fill out one section, that's fine. If you fill out multiple, that's fine, but you see all the different sections in here. And then at the very end, you'll notice it puts a summary on there. So it has my material, it has my equipment costs in there, and then the last thing I can do, which is way easier to do on a tablet, is sign your name, hit the submit button, send it, and you'll notice it sends all the data in a quick fashion back to the system. So now that the data is inside the system, what are we going to do with it? Well, that's where we get into module 2, right? So now that the data is being entered, before we actually report on it at the end, maybe we want to monitor what we're actually doing that's possible for FEMA reimbursement. So that's where this dashboard comes into play. So if I click this view dashboard inside of here, what loads is an Esri operational dashboard. Down on the left-hand side, it has all the records that we've put in so far. So the number of total records, the hours inside of here. At the top, it adds up all the costs from all those 13 records at the top. On the right, it shows the last 25 records. And on the bottom, it has some specific analytical things. So, for example, the most of the FEMA subcategory is disinfection, and it calculates the number of overtime hours, the regular hours inside of here, and then how much cost we've expended by date. So this is really, no pun intended, a 40,000-foot view of what is going on, right? So if we get the question of what's going on that we could possibly get reimbursement from, someone from management or anyone who wants to monitor this could go into this dashboard and really take a quick glance of what is going on inside the system. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Ed. Ed's going to talk about the reporting side of this from a FEMA perspective. So, Ed?
Yeah, so thanks, Ron. So as you can see, we've gone in, we've put the data in, we've got a dashboard that kind of shows everything we've got. Lastly, your emergency operation management people or your finance people or somebody is going to want to roll that up. So we can click on the reports module. And when you click on the reports module, it goes back in. It's now running survey 123. Let's run it on the desktop side of things. And if you look over the left, it has feature reports. And so underneath those reportings, you get options in here for different templates. All of these reporting templates come straight from Esri with the required fields, Esri, from FEMA with the required fields that FEMA needs. Looking at their forms, we have taken these forms. You can get a PDF or a Word doc out of them. You generate the document, and once you generate the document, it takes all of your information that you've got in there. In this case, we said show us everything at one time, and it creates a nice form that all you need to do is scroll down to the bottom of it, and you put your signature on there, you certify it, and you date it, and this becomes part of the information that you submit back to FEMA that's required for reimbursement. These forms can be run and queried on a weekly basis. They can be done by different types, however you want to do it, but that lets you track all of the information that FEMA is looking for from each of those different types of reports that are there that need to be submitted for an event like this. So that kind of covers the reporting side. The last thing I wanted to show you was is that for the airports that get signed up for this, everybody gets their own hub site. And on that hub site, you get access to your own forms, dashboards, reports. This is all free by Esri. So we partner with Esri. So Esri's hosting this on AGOL. You can sign up and ask and request for access to this application. It'll be turned over to you at the same time within the hub site. You can see we have some links there back to the airport's COVID and also to some very FEMA specific things. Because as we said, the reason we looked at building this type of application was from the major response we were getting from a lot of airports, hearing about FEMA, but not understanding the FEMA process. And so we're looking at this toolkit in partnership with Esri makes that process a lot easier and simplifies getting all of that backup information and helps you jump through the process and convoluted process, to be honest with you, of getting reimbursement from FEMA. So with that, that kind of just shows us. We'll share the, our link to this. It's also on the COVID page that Mike had, and there's also a video that goes into more detail, step by step, shows you all the fields and everything. So with that, I will turn it back over to Terry.
All right, thanks. Appreciate that. With that, what we've wanted to do is really to try to show you some free support, both in terms of software, in terms of applications, and what we hope is the start of a dialogue, really, that we engage with you, the airport and the aviation community. How can we at Esri and Esri's partners like Woolpert and others, how can we build the type of applications that are going to help you, the airports, really recover and respond to what I'm very sure is going to be a very long process of recovery. So feel free to type your questions into the question box, and we'll try to answer as many as we can during the remaining time. So Ed, maybe I'll start with one. If somebody is interested in the FEMA application, what should they do? How do they go about that?
Yeah, so I would suggest there's a link on the airport's COVID Esri website that will take you to our hub site where it's hosted. And at the very bottom of that, there's a contact link that you can just send an email to Woolpert support at woolpert.com on there and put a request of what you want. And what we will do is we will put together a quick hub site for you, give you access to it, and we will put you on the list to have a more detailed webinar on the functionality and how you go about it from start to finish.
Okay, great. This is a question for David and for Mike. Does the airport cleaning app require the use of ArcGIS indoors? So I'll over to you.
No, it does not. It doesn't.
It's available for the indoors platform, but it's not necessary.
Yeah. So so it does not require. We are looking, and there is a question relating to, have we developed anything to look at social distancing? And certainly we've been having that discussion internally. We do think that perhaps the use of indoors would be appropriate, both in terms of how can airports begin to look at redesigned spaces, both to allow for greater social distancing, but how might we also use Wi-Fi and beacons to identify from cell phones, perhaps areas where passengers are, perhaps too many passengers are congregating. And so we are certainly looking at those types of solutions. If any of you on the airport side have ideas on that, we would love to hear it. As I said, we're really very much interested in how can we really start a dialogue in terms of what are airports going to need, how can we from our side help support those. David, you want to add to that on the social distancing at all?
No, and I think that's it, Terry. The ArcGIS Indoors platform, I think, could be really helpful in sort of increasing surveillance and situational awareness in terminals and concourses, and certainly using IoT, so connectivity between Wi-Fi or Bluetooth beacons and mobile devices would allow us to track the movement of people, the density of people. And so if you've got areas of very high concentration, that would help you identify them and respond to that situation. Also, things like we heard in an earlier discussion today, thoughts about controlling number of people on things like escalators and elevators and stairways, and making sure that handrails and so on are constantly being cleaned to try and minimize the transmission of any disease. So lots of ideas, and to Terry's point, if anyone would like to explore those further with us, we'd be very happy to speak to you. And just so you understand, ArcGIS Indoors is one of those platforms that could be made available through the disaster response program at no cost.
So, and again, with the ACI blog that we referenced a little bit earlier, and we will send you the links to all the, not only make these slides available, but I would encourage you to take a look. There really was the very strong suggestion that really sort of finding new and better and more effective ways of communicating with passengers as they begin to come back to the airports. And those are really sort of mobile solutions that also can be supported with indoors, as well as the types of communication. Again, we at Esri think that story maps are a very effective way. It's really just how do you communicate the actions that you're taking at the airport to make travelers feel safer. How can you document all the safety, health, and hygiene efforts that you are taking? How do you give passengers confidence that the airport is very clean and that they will not be subjecting themselves to undue risk? And so I think, finding more effective ways of communicating that to perhaps not so much the business traveler, but for the sort of the vacation or the average traveler as they begin to think about coming back to the airports. So Let's see, another question here. Can you post the link to the disaster response site? And yes, I believe someone has done that.
Yeah.
So
it's in the chat window.
yeah, as well as Ed did post the link to the FEMA reimbursement as well. So let's see. I think that's sort of what we're having in terms of questions at the moment. Again, feel free to type your questions in. David, you want to speak a little bit about the kind of the dialogue that we're hoping we can develop over time? And
yeah, so we've had thoughts about establishing either a LinkedIn or a GeoNet forum to allow us to continue these discussions on an ongoing basis. And as soon as we put that forum in place, we'll make you aware. We'll advise you where that is. But certainly we would welcome any feedback you've got about what we've done, or again, any additional solutions you think we could help you with. Hope you can take advantage of these services and software that Esri is making available.
yeah, and again, it is Esri has always been sort of founded on the notion that, you know, we're really here to help, and particularly in the context of disasters. And this certainly is one of the most unique disasters that we've certainly had in the U.S. And we want to try to do everything that we possibly can. We want to really look to all of you to the long term. How can we, over the next several years, hopefully return to normal in the context of airports? But our goal is, how do we help you in the short and medium term through what we know is a very, very difficult time? So with that, any final thoughts, David?
No, not from me, Terry. Just grateful to everyone spending a bit of time with us, and encourage them to reach out to us.
Yeah, indeed. So again, these the slides will be available on GeoNet, and then we will make the recording. It will be posted in 2 or 3 days on the Esri website, on the transportation webinar series. So again, we'd like to thank you, everyone, for attending. And again, we hope that we can create that dialogue. How can we all work together to get through these quite difficult times? So with that, let me close it off, and thanks for attending.
Thank you.